So you're going to hear about it. So Sistema Huautla. Huautla is the name of a city, town in the mountains of southern Mexico in the state of Oaxaca. Sistema is Spanish for system, so it's a cave system. And we gave it a name. You see at the bottom it says I'm PESH co-leader. PESH is Proyecto Espeleológico Sistema Huautla, or the Huautla Cave System Speleological Project. And the other co-leader is Tommy Shiflett from Virginia. Both of us have been going there a long time. This is from my high school newsletter. And it's an awful long time ago. You can see 55 years ago, 1965, I'm the guy on the left, and I was a junior in high school. And the reason I show this is a couple reasons. One, I've been caving a long time and was serious about it, even looking to be a speleologist, not just a caver, and contribute to the body of knowledge. But this is also the year that Huautla was found by cavers. I had no idea. I was in Ohio. That's a suburb of Dayton, Ohio, southeast Ohio, not far from Kentucky. And the lower left-hand paragraph, though, says that a couple of us were going to go to the NSS convention that summer in Bloomington, Indiana. And my life changed when I went to that NSS convention at age 16, in that, number one, I decided I wanted to go to college there because they had a caving club. And also the world opened up to me in joining the NSS and seeing what other people were doing around the country. And I even think I heard about caving in Mexico at that convention. While I was in college at Indiana University in Southern Indiana, I went to Surprise Pit, got into vertical caving, went to Surprise Pit, and there at Surprise Pit in the fall of 1968 met Richard Schreiber. And Richard Schreiber and I became very good friends from then on until he passed away in 1990. For about 22 years, we were very good friends. And I got in on Ellison's cave. And I went in the cave, went in Ellison's the next week after Richard and Della McGuffin camped in there for a week and found all that bottom cave and found incredible from the bottom. Looked up it, didn't know if there was a way to the top of it. And then in May of '69, I was in on the first ascent and ascent of Incredible. And Richard Schreiber's there at the entrance with no helmet on the left. I'm the next guy on the right, 20 years old. And Della McGuffin, his then girlfriend, is the girl in the middle. And then 5 of us were from Bloomington, Indiana, were college students. So we took many, many trips into Ellison's with Richard and saw a lot of the cave and mapped it. So I've been, So I've been going to tag ever since then, and was just there the other day, camped out with Gerald there at the Snail Shell, in which Snail Shell Cave a couple of times this last weekend. Most of the caving I've done in tag, though, has been with Jim Smith, who's a very dear friend of mine, and I've known him since he was 18 years old. Look at him now. So Richard Schreiber, when I was at Ellison's, was the first person to tell me about Huautla. He went with a Canadian expedition in 1968, and they established it as the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere at 2,000 feet deep, 612 meters. And Huautla is down here in the state of Oaxaca. I'm circling it with my cursor here. Oaxaca is how that state is spelled. And up here in the northern part of the state of Oaxaca, in the mountain range that overlooks the coastal plain, and where these 3 states of Oaxaca, Puebla, and Veracruz come together, is where the 1,000-meter deep caves of Mexico are. That's where the thickest limestone in Mexico are. The road up to Huautla is memorable. Anybody that's ever done it remembers it. I'm actually a veteran of having gone off that road in the back of a truck. 40 years ago, and lucky to be alive. The carcass of that truck is still there. I stand there and look at it every time I go back. And that's a story in itself about 4 cavers being in the back of the truck that actually was in free fall for a while, spinning in midair. It was a memorable occasion. But that road is now paved. The first cavers that went there from Austin, Texas, in June of 1965 didn't know that the road was completed all the way to Huautla. Their aerial photographs that they got a hold of and basic topographic maps indicated that it only went about halfway there. Well, when they drove down there in June of 65, lo and behold, the road had been completed all the way to Huautla. And when they arrived, it was pretty much only indigenous people, and most of them didn't speak Spanish. They had to ask around and use sign language before they finally found somebody that spoke Spanish. And we're told that no, the caves aren't right here. The caves are about 10 kilometers to the south and southeast, and there are big caves out there. So they went back the following year, and this is a group right here from 1967. Lower left hand is Terry Raines, very well known for a lot of caving in Mexico. And probably none of the rest of them you've heard of. Some of them aren't with us anymore. Some of them are still around and coming to caver events. But that last photo, let me back up one. The significance of this last photo is this was April the 9th, 1967. And what's remarkable about that date is at the same time this photograph was being taken, Golondrinas was being descended for the first time that same day.
Amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool. So these guys were working on this entrance, and Gerald knows this entrance very well. This is the 250-foot drop against the wall of Sótano de San Agustín. And that is now one of 28 entrances to Sistema Huautla. We've pieced together a 55-mile-long cave system with 28 entrances. But this was the original one entered. And you can see somebody on rope there. That's Yvonne Drums from Virginia. And you see she's climbing a rope up a path. Well, that path overgrows between trips to this cave. So the first person that goes down has to hang on rope and swing a machete. And the thing about swinging a machete when you're on rope is obviously you have to have presence of mind to only swing it below you. We did a poster a couple of years ago, and this is the chronology part of the poster that shows the eras of caving in Huautla from 65 up until 71. That was in the early days. Texans at first, through 65, 66, then Canadians who were really British cavers that moved to Hamilton, Ontario to study under the great karst geologist Derek Ford. And they were hardcore cavers from England that knew about wetsuit caving and were very vertically caving versed. And they were very active there from 67 through 71. And then there was a hiatus and nobody went there from 71 to 76. And then my generation picked it up with Richard Schreiber organizing that 1976 expedition. And then I stepped in and started organizing expeditions in 77, and we had 3 of them that year. And then you can see that it was steady pretty much every year all the way up to 94 when the big diving expedition happened that the book Beyond the Deep is about. And then we decided, well, there's other places to go. You know, 18 years of going there steadily. I started going to China, other places in Mexico. And then 2001, Bill Stone did an expedition. 2007, we started up again. And then after the British expedition in 2013, we decided to reorganize, give it the name of PESH, and establish some goals, one of which was to go 10 years in a row. That 77 expedition, March of 77, was sort of an epic. And Gerald was there. I was there. Marion Smith was there. And we got trapped underground for 4 days. You remember that, Gerald?
Oh, I sure do.
Somebody accidentally pulled a rope up a 318-foot shaft and didn't know it. Caught it on their duffel bag they were hauling out and left. And we then needed to leave the cave a couple days later because we had somebody that had run out of insulin. It was an insulin dependent diabetic. And when we went with him to go get some more insulin, there was no rope. Actually, that might have been Richard and you, Gerald, that went up there and found the rope was missing, I think.
It was 3 of us. Mary.
Yeah, I was still in camp.
Carolyn breathed. Carolyn looks like she's about to like keel over in shock of thinking of this situation.
Yeah,
So
well,
how'd y'all get the rope?
there were people coming that I'd been caving with in another part of Mexico at Sumidario Chiv down in Chiapas, down near the Guatemalan border. And after Gerald and Richard and whoever else that was with you came back to camp and underground camp 500 meters deep and said, we got a problem. We're trapped in the cave. That's when I told them, what you don't know is I left a note up there in the field house to the people coming. And I said, don't come in the cave until you've heard from us and we switch off with you.
Bill, that's an anti-call out. That's not a call out. That's an anti-call out.
I wish I hadn't left that note. Anyway, it all worked out. Here we go. This is a 78 expedition. That's me in that maroon colored down jacket 42 years ago. And this was my 4th expedition. This is in the spring of 78. And we explored Sotano del Agua de Carrizo that year, which went 841 meters deep. Remember, the deepest cave in the United States now is still only a little over 500 meters deep. 40 some years ago, we did an 800 and some meter deep cave, which we just did connect to the system 2 years ago. There's Schreiber again in the upper right. The people on the far left are from Australia. The woman there on the left is Julia James, who is a well-known Australian karst geologist. In fact, she was the president of the International Union of Speleology a few years ago. I saw her in Australia a couple years ago when I went to the International Congress. The guy in the doorway up there is Alan Worrell. I'm circling him. And this is Bill Stone, who a lot of you have heard of, and he's been active in Huautla, along with others of us that have been plugging away at it for decades. 2 significant years, which I haven't researched, but I don't know if there's any other cave system in the world that could say this, but in 1980 and 1981, 2 years in a row, we explored 3,000 meters of vertical cave each year. That's over 10,000 feet. Now, a couple of years ago, I was with Gerald. I think we were in Cuba together, weren't we, Gerald? And I said, Gerald, maybe 6,000 meters of vertical cave that we did in 2 years is more than all the vertical cave and tag. And he corrected me on that. Not even close, but I thought that was a cool thing to say if it was true, but it's not. But still, that's a lot of vertical cave that we explored 2 years in a row.
So we're making tag more vertical by the weekend. Every weekend.
I know. There's no catching.
More and more vertical.
That's why I
One
still
bolt
go over
at a
there.
time.
I love it. All right, here's a cool thing about this book. Bill Stone, Barbara M. Indy, and a professional writer named Monty Paulson wrote this. It's mostly about the big 1994 expedition to dive the deep sump at the bottom of Sistema Huautla that we found back on my first trip there in 1977. Mostly about that. I teased Bill Stone about the subtitle, The Deadly Descent into the World's Most Treacherous Cave. What I said to him was, God, I didn't think it was that treacherous. You should have told me. I thought it was kind of friendly. And he hangs his head and says, give me a break. That was the publisher. But here's something cool. This is a secret. See that picture?
Is it you?
No, but it's tag.
Where?
I don't know. I forget. But somebody, and I asked Stone, how'd that happen? You got plenty of good pictures from Chevy. Apparently, that's some stock footage that they pulled out of somewhere and put on the cover.
That's hilarious.
I know. Here's the book I wrote. This is the one to read. So this is kind of autobiographical in that it's about the expeditions I was on in that 30-year span between 1977 and 2007. So it takes it up to 13 years ago.
Bill, where do we find that book?
Well,
Your book.
Amazon.
NSS bookstore, Speleo book?
Speleo books. Yeah, I would hope that you'd buy it from Speleo Books and keep it in the family as opposed to Amazon.
Evil Amazon.
So Speleo Books has got it. I've written 2 caving books. The other one is titled Yochib, the River Cave. And that's also in Mexico. Huautla has appeared in all 3 editions of Encyclopedia of Caves. This is academic book and peer-reviewed. Probably recognize the name of Will White, the very famous karst hydrologist at Penn State University, and David Culver, who's also an academic. And we were invited to contribute chapters about Sistema Huautla for all 3 editions. I have a PDF of our chapter, and if you email me and want to read it, you can read about all of the ologies of speleology that we've done, and biology, geology, paleontology, and so forth. I will be glad to send that to you as a PDF, and you can read on the speleology that we've done in Huautla. Okay, this brings us up to 2013. So the significance of 2013 is none of us that had been going to Huautla regularly had been there since 2007. Like I said before, we started going to other places. I went to China a couple times. Tommy Shiflett went on several China expeditions, other parts of Mexico, and so on. And then I was contacted by a British caver, big-time British cave diver named Chris Jewell, and his name is up there somewhere. Anyway, Chris Jewell was one of the rescuers of the Thai soccer team in Thailand back in 2018. And he and other top cave divers from England wanted to go dive, oh, there's his name, second row down, Chris Jewell, wanted to go dive the sump at the very bottom of Sistema Huautla that Bill Stone and Barbara Amindi had reached on that big 94 expedition that the book Beyond the Deep is about. So they needed a lot of logistical information. And Tommy Shiflett and I were their points of contact. And we said, after we gave them all the information they need, right down to rope lengths they needed, and who to take as a translator, and who to rent houses from, and all that, everything they needed to know, we said, we want to join you guys for 2 weeks of your expedition and check a lead. Since you're going to use the original route down the Sotno de San Agustin entrance, we want to check out a lead that both of us have noticed about 300 meters deep. And we'll just use your ropes and go check out our lead. So Elliot Stahl joined us and a couple of cavers from Texas, and we joined them. And they were there for 2 months. This is looking back up the San Agustin entrance. This was their destination, which is like over, I don't even know exactly how deep it is below that entrance, but it's got to be on the order of 900 meters, and through a couple of long sumps. And they camped back there beyond sumps, and they dove what Bill Stone had called the mother of all sumps, or sump 9. And they added 81 meters in depth, and it was all underwater because that sump just went straight down. And that then allowed Huautla to surpass Sistema Cheve in depth and become the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere again. Cheve had been for a few years. Is there a question?
No, I think someone's just not on mute. I actually can't figure out who it is.
Okay. So anyway, this was dived 81 meters deep. This is Jason Mallison, kind of a renowned cave diver from England. And he is the cave diver that took the first Thai soccer team kid out. The pressure was really on him to do it right, obviously, because you don't want to go back for the second one and say, well, I hope this works out better than the first one did. And it's an interesting story. I don't know if you've heard it. I've heard an interview he did, but the first kid he was taking out woke up underwater in a sump. They hadn't sedated him enough. And Jason had to tread water with his fins and open up a kit and load up a syringe and give him another shot to put him under, because you don't want him squirming and kicking when you're taking him through a sump. So this guy's a real level-headed guy. The guy that interviewed him, I read something he said afterwards. He said it was like interviewing a brick wall because he's so deadpan. And if you can find the interview with him, it's very interesting. But he's a top cave diver, and he and Chris Jewell did the dive. So Tommy Shiflett and I got back to the airport in Oaxaca. I was flying back to Texas, and he was flying back to Virginia. And we looked at each other there in the airport, and we said, God, we love that place. If we don't reorganize and start going back to Huautla, who will? Somebody will someday. It won't be us. Let's do it. So right there, sitting at that table with the napkin that you can see right here, like Willie Nelson has said to write songs, we sat there and we made a list of goals for a new project. We would name it Proyecto Espeleológico Sistema Huautla, acronym PESH, and there's the goals. Month-long expeditions in April, the month of April, for 10 years. 2014 through 2023. Well, now it's 2024 because we got within 14 days of going this year, and then pandemic hit, and we canceled. We postponed. We're going to do 4 more. We've done 6, but we didn't go this year. We didn't need to be taking that disease to those indigenous people in the mountains or have somebody get sick with it while down there with the medical facilities that are available and so on.
Or underground, because we're camping for how long usually, Bill?
Well,
4
we've
nights?
had camps last, 15 days.
Yeah. Yep.
Then conduct full speleology, all the ologies, biology, paleontology, geology, cartography, archaeology, psychology, that's listed there. We aren't doing it currently, but we worked with NASA one time back in the 90s to do profiles on what it's like to have a small team in a isolated place with intense activity away from the diurnal cycle of the surface. It's a pretty interesting study. Anthropology, what are the local people's beliefs about the caves? And I'm going to say more about that in a little while. And paleoclimatology, I'm going to say a little bit about that in a little while, but we're just getting into that now and working with a professor out in Nevada on coming up with data so that cycles of climate through the last few 100,000 years and maybe even how old are the caves can come from that study. We support Mexican cave scientists, which means they don't pay any fees like all the rest of the cavers, but for the most part, they aren't cavers. So we outfit them with gear and get them in and out of the cave safely, and that's worked out real well. A whole bunch of papers have been published because we're doing that. Excellence in photography. We've had some top cave photographers come, a couple from Tennessee that come to mind, and you'll see some of their pictures in a little while, are Chris Higgins and Matt Tomlinson from Knoxville. And we've had a top cave photographer from Poland join us, Kasia Bernaka, who also goes to Cheve. A whole bunch of them. And we want to publish a book when this project wraps up of cave photography, like a large format coffee table type book of the best photographs. When we started PESH in 2014, our first expedition, the cave was 65 kilometers long, which is 42 miles. And now it's 89 kilometers long, which is 55 miles. So we've added 13 miles in length, and it was 1,545 meters deep. Our goal is to have it be a vertical mile, 1610. I don't know that we're going to reach that because we might have already found the highest entrances that we can. We'll see. But right now it's 1,560 meters deep. You can see that we've added 15 meters in depth. And really where that came from was getting a hold of high precision GPS instruments. And I'm talking about the kind that can give you a reliable location within 100 centimeters of, plus or minus. So we adjusted the whole cave map, given that we had 20 entrances that we got real accurate locations on. So it adjusted the cave map and actually could have gone either way. Could have made the cave shallower, could have made the cave deeper. Thankfully, it made the cave deeper. And it's 5,117 feet deep. So when we have an expedition, we started out with a party. And this is my daughter's deck, her backyard in Austin, Texas. Austin has been the launching pad for caving in Mexico since caving in Mexico started back in the 60s. And we have a party and have a good time. And have a band. There's a caver band, the Gary Franklin band in Austin. And so they bring their sound equipment. And then when they take a break, that's me at the mic talking about our objectives for our expedition. This was in late March of 2019, the last expedition we had. The guy, handsome guy in the blue jacket back there is none other than the president of the NSS, Gary Schindel, who lives in San Antonio, 80 miles south of Austin. So I asked him if he'd come up and say a few words. We're an official project of the NSS. So he did, and had a good party. Next morning, we got up early, went to a storage unit that I'd rented for a few months. I kept loading stuff up. And the big challenge was to get everything into those two vehicles. The van that the project owns, and then the big Dodge Ram four-wheel drive truck in the background that Blake Harrison from New Mexico owns. So we managed to get everything in there and began the 3-day drive to Huautla. First day is just down to the border, and we stay in a Motel 6 there in Laredo and get up the next morning early when the border guards on the Mexican side are still in a good mood. Nobody's ruined their day yet, and hopefully not have to unload very much. That's the objective. And that's always worked out pretty well, but you never know. The day could come when everything's got to come out. That could happen, and we know that. So then we spend 2 days driving across Mexico to Huautla. And this is what Huautla looked like when I started going there. And when the first cavers went there, nothing was paved. There wasn't any pavement within 50 miles, about 65 kilometers. But now it's a much different place. And it's grown a lot. The road up into the mountains all the way to Huautla is paved. The streets in Huautla are paved. There's even 4G cellular data available in town. There's Wi-Fi in many restaurants. There's good restaurants. There's a couple of hotels, probably actually about 4 or 5 hotels. And we get to Huautla after 3 days of driving, and we stay in a hotel, and we've got permissions to work out with the local government officials. We rent a couple of refrigerators. We buy groceries. And then after a day or a day and a half or so of doing all that right here in the center of town, we drive out to the southeast through this notch up here and head over to a little village where we rent some buildings. This is the last descent into the Plan Carlota Valley, and at the bottom of which is this friendly little town. There's actually 2 entrances to the cave system, less than a mile up the road at the bottom of the picture. This is a drone photograph that Chris Higgins from Knoxville took. And in this area right here, we rent several of the buildings. There's the van that you saw before. And this is really the nerve center of our expedition. This is where we rent houses that are slept in, and our community room over here where we have our kitchen set up. So when we first arrive, we'll set everything up, spend a day hooking up the kitchen, and we rent a room there full of storage with a lot of rope. You can see back here, there's some boxes of PMI. PMI is a sponsor. Give us about half the rope we take every year, and then we buy the rest of it at a discount. They've always been good to us. And Schreiber, of course, was one of the founders of PMI, and I was very good friends with Steve Hudson, who passed away just 2 or 3 years ago. He was the president of PMI, and I've known him since he was about 19 years old, I think. A good friend of mine. So we've had a good relationship with PMI, and it is, I think, the best caving rope out there. Anyway, we also have all kinds of stuff, surveying gear, underground camping gear, you name it, that we've accumulated through the years, and we store it down there. The first couple of years of Pesh, we hauled everything back and filled my garage with it. And then, and I mean, filled it. And then it would take me about 3 months to inventory everything and winterize it, I call it, hide it away in the garage and anywhere I could to make room to live out there, you know, to not have it cluttering the garage for a whole year. But then we found this room to rent there, and we just leave everything there. We don't have to cross the border with it back and forth every year. But actually, the room I'm sitting in right here in Irving, Texas, is full on all sides to the ceiling with all the stuff that was supposed to go down there this year and didn't. So thankfully, we got a spare bedroom here that's full of expedition stuff. And right over here to my right is about 6,600 feet of PMI, still on school.
Bill, your background's a cave, so we can't see what's behind you.
That way. I know.
Yeah. We'll take your
But
word
I'm
for it.
telling you about it. You don't need to see it. You know what boxes of PMI look like.
No,
So
I want to
here's,
see him, Bill. Bill,
let
I
me
love
tell you about
here.
Vico Jones. Vico Jones,
Yes, speak
you would
out.
think from seeing this picture that he's a cook, but he's not. He's a chef. And what I heard said about Vico is that he can even take a can of sardines and make a gourmet meal out of it. In fact, I'm going to challenge him next expedition to do that very thing. I like sardines, and I think he could do it. He's a fabulous chef. And he doesn't sleep anywhere but in the kitchen. And the reason he sleeps in the kitchen at night is so that when cavers come in at all hours, and I mean all hours, 3 or 4 in the morning, whenever, he's there. He hears them. He gets up. There's hot food. He's dedicated that way. He's also a wonderful diplomat. If we got a problem with somebody and they're upset with us for whatever reason, we made a lot of noise. We got out of a cave. Dogs started barking. Kids started crying. They don't want us to go there anymore. We send Vico to see him. And then they're arm-in-arm buddies a few minutes later, and all is good. So he's very valuable to the project. And then we rent some buildings to sleep in. 4 different buildings. You never know until you go and get there for setup week exactly what ones are available, but this is the setup. Some people take tents. I do, and for 2 reasons. One is there's vampire bats here, and I don't want to be known as food, even though they've never feasted upon a human that we know of. We've seen them on the hogs that are right next door, so you know they are flying around this area. Another thing is it defines your sleeping area. Like for instance, this brave soul over here put a sleeping bag right there by the door. You know that heavy-footed cavers are going to walk right across that sleeping bag because they're not going to want to go around it. It's just going to happen. So I always set up a tent for those 2 reasons. And then here's another house where people had hammocks. And then we, once we're there and once cavers have arrived after a week of setup that we who went down with the vehicles do, then they arrive, we start preparing for caving. And we have hot showers. This unit I bought last year is great. You take a 5-gallon bucket of water and you get hot water on you in a few seconds with this thing. It's fueled by propane. If you went to the NSS convention in Cookeville last year, the keynote speaker at the banquet on Friday night was this young lady, Alma Estrada Rodriguez. And I would call her a godsend in that about 5 years ago on our PESH Facebook page, she sent a friend request and I accepted it. And then I noticed that she started posting comments in perfect English. And I mean grammatically correct English, the right words capitalized, everything. And I finally wrote her and I said, you live in Huautla and you are that knowledgeable in English? Tell me about yourself. And she said, well, I have a college degree in English. I have a college degree in French. I've taught university level. And my mother and father were from Huautla. My dad died. My mom wanted to move back home. And I've moved here to help her. And I'm going to open an English school here in Huautla, a private school. And then she said, and I think what you guys are doing here is the most interesting thing happening. If I can help, I'd like to. Well, you know, they say, watch what you ask for. because I'm in touch with her literally daily. I have been today. And with new means of communications, that's possible. And so I'm staying in touch with her about COVID in Huautla and all kinds of things, local political situation, all kinds of things. And she and I also are a real good team for going to see local elected officials. And her grandpa owns a store in Huautla and has all his life, and everybody knows her grandpa. And when that comes out that she's his granddaughter, there's always a big smile because he's very well liked. And we go around and get permissions to go in the caves. She and I also have given many school presentations. And with my Spanish, it would be a struggle, but she translates like a United Nations translator. I mean, keeps up with me. She's got this cute little signal she gives me when I've just gone on too far, and she's going to have to catch up. But when I stop, she does every time, never misses. She's very good. And what's really cool is the people here, grandma, mom and dad, they got their beliefs. They have their beliefs of what they think's in the caves, but they haven't been in the caves. And the students have all heard grandma, grandpa, mom and dad's beliefs in the caves, but they ask astute questions. They really do. They get it, and they appreciate that we've been in there and we've seen what's there, and we've taken photographs and we're doing studies, and they're very interested, and we have a good time. And I think Alma and I have spoken to as many as 1,200 students total, something like that, probably more than that. We've given a lot of presentations, and it's a goodwill gesture. It's community outreach. We also deal with the spiritual world and the beliefs of the local people here. This is the 2019 expedition, and that's me getting the first blessing as the leader of the project from a curandero who's got olive leaves, and he's saying lots of good words to the cave spirits in Mazateco, their language there. Each of us had a beeswax candle that we lit. And it's a real spiritual place. I've been to India, and it's a very, very spiritual place. It's just something that you know is in the air everywhere you go all the time. And Huautla is that way too. And you see that in the paintings. And if you would look at our Facebook page, Proyecto Espeleológico Sistema Huautla, that's the name of the Facebook page, and look at the albums, there's a whole album there of wall art and different kinds of art that are in Huautla. And if you would Google Huautla de Jimenez, you would find that Huautla is known for two things. One, the magic mushroom. And you see mushrooms in this painting. And I don't know if we'll ever prove it through archaeological study, but a lot of us think that maybe this is the type locale for psilocybin mushrooms. This is where they originally come from. And if you get a hold of a recent book called How to Change Your Mind, which is a bestseller, very interesting book about experiments and psychedelics coming back, from page 2 until 116, steadily talks about Huautla in that book as being a place where sort of a awakening of consciousness occurred. In fact, there's some incredible ideas in that book, such as maybe the digital age came from these mushrooms being discovered to be in Huautla in the 60s. Maybe so. You'll have to read it and see what you think. Anyway, there's interesting art that I like taking pictures of on the walls of buildings all around Huautla. You can see this is a bus stop. There's benches sitting there. This is in San Andres. And here, this is in the main city park of Huautla. There's this mystical guy with these mushrooms growing up out of him. Really interesting stuff. Now, we were told by a local government guy 3 years ago, I guess it was 4 years ago, 2016, that we really needed to hire a curandero and have a ceremony because, you know, we might have a problem with the cave spirits because we haven't done that. So I said, well, God, people have been coming here for almost 50 years. I guess we're really behind. How do we find a curandero? And he said, I'll find you one. So he did. And this is in our field house in Plan Carlota. That caver there with a beard with that turkey being passed over him is John Lillestolen. Some of you may know him. He's from Blacksburg, Virginia, a very active caver and cave diver. the curanderos sent word to me to buy a young turkey in the market and manzanita flowers to make a necklace for the turkey. And I went to the market and Anna, did you go with me? Yeah. You and I went to the market.
I
Yeah,
went
we
with
could
you.
not
We were
find
looking-
a turkey. It was like no turkeys. And then finally, it was almost as if a shaft of sunlight shone down upon us, and a miracle occurred. And some guy said, "Oh, you need a turkey? Yeah, go down that side street. There's a turkey down there." There was one turkey in the market, and then there was a flower seller right there next to the turkey guy with the exact kind of flower that we were supposed to get. Kind of gave me a chill. Like, how did that happen? So we went back. He did this ceremony, this ritual. I told all the cavers, I said, go along with this. Don't giggle, don't smile, don't laugh, don't ridicule it. Be serious. We got to do the right thing here. So each of us lit a beeswax candle. That's copal incense smoldering there. And he passed that turkey over all of us and said all these good words in Mazateco that none of us could understand. And then he said, we got to go to a cave entrance. I said, well, there's a 200-foot pit up the valley here that's part of Sistema Huautla. It's a 5-minute drive. Let's go up there. What I didn't know was that I was going to be asked to sacrifice that turkey into that 200-foot pit. In fact, I asked 3 times, what?
Yes.
Is that what he said? It's not going to live. It's going to die. And it did. And there were cavers camped in the cave too, who came out a few days later and wondered, how in the heck did this turkey with a necklace on get here in the pit? You can see the necklace in this picture. You see the yellow flowers around his neck. So a few days later, the curandero came back, but this time in blue jeans and a sweatshirt. He's in his civvies now. And the woman there that whose arm he's holding was an anthropologist with UNESCO from Mexico City who had come out to train people on how to deal with tourists. They'd like to bring tourists to Huautla. Well, they wanted to go in a cave. So I said, well, there's a little cave you can just walk in up the valley. Let's go up there. And about 50 feet into the cave was some broken pottery, about 2,000 years old. And when she got to that pottery, all of a sudden, now this is a educated professional anthropologist, but still, she thought that spirits had jumped into her body. And when I heard all the yelling and had to come out of the cave, this is the view I saw, was him holding on to her. And what you can't see is that she was shaking like she was having an epileptic seizure. She was shivering and shaking, and her eyes were rolling back, and she had these spirits inside of her. And I thought, oh, I'm going to get to see the burping ceremony, because I'd heard of it, where the guy puts his thumb on her forehead and his fingers on top of her head, and he says all these words in Mazateco, and he brings the spirits out of her, and then he turns around and burps them into the air. I'm going to see the burp. So I got down there to get a close-up photo, but when he turned around to burp, I was right there in the path, and he burped into my face. So everybody gasped because, oh my God, I got the spirit into me, which I said, that's all right. It's okay. It's cool. I like it. There's room in there for it. Cave spirits are welcome. And it didn't really freak them out. But then a few months later, I was told by a local down there that this weird painting had shown up. This one. And I said, God, that looks like me. They said, well, yeah, that's you 5 times. And I said, well, I want an interpretation of that painting, please. And I got one. I got one from a friend of ours, a woman that lives in San Andres, village that we drive through. The rooster is the observer in their beliefs, who observes humans all the time and tries to figure out why we do what we do, and is, of course, duty bound to wake us up in the morning. I really wanted to know about the me that's tied up in the chair. What's with that one? And the answer was that I come for 1 month. That's why the 1 candle in my hand over here and the other 11 candles are in a circle. That represents the 12 months of the year. I come for 1 month and I don't stay. I restrain myself from staying. So that's the interpretation. These white squiggly lines are our ropes, and this is the spirit of the caves. up here hovering above us, so forth. So we are very respectful of their beliefs, and when we get to a cave entrance, we'll have a moment of silence at the entrance, even if in this case there's 3 local people that went over the entrance with us, and they're showing us how they think we ought to do it. But no matter what, there's a lot of people living around here, so there's always eyes on you. So we do what's respectful, and we have silence at the entrance, and then once we duck into the cave, it's our world. And there's a lot of it, 55 miles. So here are cavers going to this entrance. This is the one that Turkey went down, 200-foot free fall. The caves are wonderful. Best caves I've ever been in. Very vertical. There's 600 pits in the system. And there's probably another 200 or 300 pits that we've done that are in caves that haven't been integrated into the system yet. You may have seen this picture before because it was on the cover of the NSS News a couple of years ago. The guy in the blue helmet in the foreground is Lee White, who was very active with us, went on 2 expeditions, and sadly, very sadly, in September of 2019, was killed in a car wreck in North Carolina. This is a 100-meter shaft named Son of a Pitch, named by Jim Smith, who's got a real knack for coming up with interesting names. This is the Tag Shaft, and it's named that because it was originally done by Tag Cavers, and we revisited it a couple of years ago. There's an underground camp down here at the base of it. You can just barely make out. This is a 436-foot drop, kind of like Surprise Pit in Fern Cave. And there was a crack with a tremendous wind blowing through it at the side of the bottom of the shaft. That was the lead that people went to check out. That was eventually pushed through to a shaft series, and this cave was then connected to Sistema Huautla 2 years ago. That was that 840-meter deep cave that we did back in the late 70s. This is looking back up the Tag Shaft. That's Jason Lavender there, who's from Tag somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where. And this is another Chris Higgins photo. We made this into a postcard that we gave away to store owners in Huautla last year so that they could sell them. This is some of the big stuff at the bottom. This is the Metro. Gerald, you've been there at the bottom of Sotno de San Agustin. This is Jason Lavender again on the way through La Grieta, carrying a camp duff. Sometimes you got to swim.
Bill, how heavy are those cave packs we take?
I don't know. Usually probably about 20 kilos, maybe 40 pounds, maybe less.
Yep.
It's better to have them about 15 kilos, so 30
Yep.
some pounds.
30 to 40. That's what I was warned.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
big deal.
They're usually about 20 to 25 kilos.
Yeah. Just
This
for
drop
everybody
is
that does sport trips.
The stupendous drop. It's the name of it is the Space Drop. It's a 77-meter free fall, just about 200 feet deep free fall drop. And what's interesting about it is at the top of it, you're at the same depth as the deepest cave in the United States, and the cave's about to get awesome. And you can hear this roar below, and it's interesting when you have somebody there that's never been deeper than the deepest cave in the United States, and you say, hey, get quiet, listen, and they say, what is that? Oh, that's the waterfall you'll be traversing around in a little while. Put your cheek to the wall. And they put their cheek to the wall, and they can feel the wall vibrating from the force of that waterfall down there. And that's why we call that area at the top of this drop the wide-eyed zone, because you see people's eyes get big sometimes there. Not used to it yet. More big cave, lower cave. This point is historic because at the top of this drop on May the 3rd, 1980, 40 years ago, is when a cave named Linita, the first 1,000-meter deep cave outside of Europe that we explored that year, was connected to Sotno de San Agustin at the top of that waterfall. And that night in a steep underground camp in Linita, 600-meter deep camp, we came up with the name of Sistema Huautla for the now cave system. So that's a historic spot right there. Anthodite Hall is the gym, the showpiece of the cave system. It's half again bigger than a dome stadium. I'm here in the Dallas, Texas area. Cowboy Stadium's 10 miles from here, and you know, like the one in New Orleans or wherever. But it's half again the size of that. And the most remarkable thing about it, I believe, is that it's got 1,000 meters of rock above it to the surface, 3,300 feet of rock above it. Yet there isn't all that much breakdown on the floor. Very stable. Named after the anthodites on the walls, which I have a close-up of in a second. This fabulous photo was taken by Matt Tomlinson from Knoxville, looking at a different angle of Anthodite Hall. And there's what the anthodites look like. There's clusters of them all over the walls. Maybe the best examples in the world. We've had many different underground camps. This one was back in 1977. That's Richard Schreiber again on the right, the silhouette. And this is Camp 2 in La Grieta. This camp is being used again now, and we will use it in 2021. And hadn't been used in all those years, but was used again in 2019. This is when the Brits were there in 2013. This is Camp 3, Sotno de San Agustin. I love the fault line on the wall back there, and the displacement where you can't even match up beds at all. So that's where the caves are there. This particular camp, 600 meters deep in Sotno de San Agustin, was first used in 1979, used in 81, used in 88 and 94, 2013. So it's been used a whole bunch of times. A very good place. This is last year. This is a camp in Nitanashi. And at one point last year, we had 5 underground camps happening at the same time, which is a new record for us. So we who were in support on the surface were almost alone, you know, like 3 or 4 people. Everybody else, like 25 or so cavers, were all camped underground, out of contact. This is another one of the ones last year. And it took me a couple of months for Matt Tomlinson to finally tell me how he took this shot. It's almost like he threw his camera in the air because he didn't have a drone. But it turned out that there was a diving board type rock that stuck out over the camp, and he crawled out there and held his camera out at arm's length and got this really interesting picture. Here's the town of Huautla in yellow, 45,000 people, something like that. Here's the cave system. Here's the resurgence down here at the bottom. I'm circling it with a cursor. This cave is named Peña Colorada. It's an overflow cave. So when the cave floods in the rainy season, water really pours out of there, but the resurgence is down here along this river. 2 years ago, 2018, we decided to go out here to the northern edge of the karst drainage basin and try to see where the edge is. And we went out to this little tiny little village out here named Plan de Escoba. Actually, the road didn't go all the way out there. We had to walk the last kilometer or so. And when we got there, not knowing what our reception would be like, lo and behold, out came this woman who recognized me. How do I know she recognized me? I could tell by the way she was looking at me. And finally, she said my name, the name I go by when I'm here, which is a translation of William Steele, translation being Guillermo Acero. She said that. And as soon as she said it, thankfully, I remembered her name, Bertha. But I hadn't seen her in 35 years, since she was 15 years old and was a little girl kind of hanging around and giggling and being shy around our field house in San Agustin. Turned out she lives way out there at the north edge of the karst drainage basin now. And her husband came home a couple days later when we went back to visit her again. She said, come back when my husband's here and we'll talk about you renting a house from us. So last year, 2019, we rented this house out there and had a outpost field house and put a team out there to see if they could find any caves. And they did right away. In fact, it was Riley Blackwell who worked at the NSS office for a while as an intern, and I think she's back in Blacksburg, Virginia now. But Riley and Elliot Stahl and and Elliot's brother Tristan, they found this cave right away, first day out there, and then proceeded to explore it. And we had that camp, that second field house out at Plan de Escoba, the whole expedition in 2019 for the whole month. And they pushed this cave to be 5 kilometers long, which is 3.5 miles, and 400 meters deep in a month. It wasn't real straightforward. In fact, here's a place where a climb was done to bypass a place where it had ended. And they kept going down, found some big rooms, found some even bigger rooms, got into some incredible formations. We even think that maybe there's a unique formation or two. We're going to find out next year. We got a formation expert going to come spend a week with us. Guy who's kind of picked up the mantle from Carol Hill, who wrote the book Cave Minerals. He's a professor in Nevada. I'll say more about him in a minute, but this is Riley with her shoes off because it's just so pristine. And the formations just go and go and go, just unbelievable upper reaches. You might recognize this photo. This was the cover of the February NSS News. That's Fernando Hernandez introducing fluorescein dye into this new cave, Cueva Elysium. And Fernando has just in the last couple of weeks finished his master's degree at Western Kentucky University with Sistema Huautla as his thesis topic. And this was a real important dye trace because it connected. It went to Sistema Huautla. So we have high hopes for this cave next year to tie into the system. It's the second master's thesis that has been written on the hydrogeology of Sistema Huautla. Jim Smith wrote his epic thesis at the same university, Western Kentucky, back in the 80s. And you may wonder, well, why a second thesis on the same cave system? Reason is that a lot more is known about the geology because there's a bunch more roads have been built in the mountains, which exposes the strata. And strike and dip measurements have been taken in lots more road cuts. So the mapping of the subterranean strata has been made much more accurate for Fernando's thesis. We found archaeology, and my ex-wife Janet wrote her master's thesis at the University of Texas at San Antonio on the archaeology of Huautla. We don't touch anything. We put flagging tape down on the ground and make sure nobody steps on anything, disturbs any archaeology. And in a couple of cases, we've gone to the capital city of the state of Oaxaca to get archaeological experts to come see what we found and give us their read. And they publish papers about it. So we've had a good arrangement with the professional archaeologists. Back in 1981, we saw a troglodytic scorpion, and none of us had ever heard of it. Turns out, nobody had ever heard of it. That was the first one ever. And we collected him, came back to the United States, found out who the scorpion expert of the Americas is, and sent it to him. And he got all excited and said, it's a new species, maybe a new genus. You found a mature female, we need a mature male. And we said, we've seen one. He said, well, keep your eyes open. The next year we found the mature male, and it was described. And that biologist is this man right here on the right, Dr. Oscar Franke. And Oscar received the NSS Honorary Member Award in 2018 at the NSS convention. He's worked with us all these years, almost 40 years now. And I really love this photograph because he joins our expedition sometimes, and these two guys right here are graduate students of his. This guy right here, and now I guess they both got their PhDs. This guy right here next to Dr. Franke is Jose Mendoza, and Dr. Mendoza now, and his expertise is tarantulas. And this guy right here, Jesus, his expertise is harvestmen, and they came on expeditions and found new species. I just love the look of wonderment in their faces as something's pulled out of this collecting bottle, because everything we've collected in Sistema Huautla has been unknown. And I think it's 48. 48 is the number now of unknown life forms that we've collected in the caves there. This big tarantula was collected by Jose Mendoza. From this foot where I've got my cursor to the opposite foot over here, it's about 7 inches, 8 inches across there. It's a big spider, a big scary spider. And he collected it, and turned out it was an unknown species, and they named it after me, which was pretty cool. And you can see here that it says the specific name is in honor of Bill Steele, a contribution, blah, blah, blah. And really, what that ought to say is this tarantula is named after Bill Steele because he pestered us to send graduate students saying there's going to be unknown species, send graduate students, and you'll be happy you did. And they did. So I have a tarantula named after me. So what did I do? I got a t-shirt made. That's the male on the left and the female on the right. And it's Himmerhagus Bill Steelei is my tarantula. Pretty cool. This is a cave that is not integrated into Sistema Huautla, but it's got Sistema Huautla on 2, maybe even 3 sides of it. And this is looking straight down. As you can see, there's a rebelay here of the bolt and wall. And off in a side passage, we saw big bones. And I'm talking big because this scale's about 10 inches across. So that is a big scapula of something. So we took pictures. We sent them to a paleontologist in Mexico City. He sent this PhD student, who's now got his PhD in paleontology, who has a trained eye, and he immediately noticed a portion of a skull sticking up out of the dirt on the floor of the cave. And he started digging the dirt with his hands. And the more he dug, the more he decided he was going to change his dissertation topic. And he did, because what that is right there is the only skull ever found of a species of giant ground sloth. And that's what they look like. That fell into this cave longer ago than 13,000 years ago, because that's when they went extinct. And we still haven't gone back for the rest of the skeleton. What that PhD student said was the skull is the most fragile bone in the body, and if the skull is in perfect shape, the rest of it probably is too. So he wants to go back and excavate the rest of the skeleton. And hopefully we can get to that next time we go. This skull was found last year in that new cave. And this is a skull of a Pleistocene sheep. And don't think docile sheep like today's sheep. This was the size of a bull, a big like bullfighting bull. And it had fallen in a small entrance and rolled down a slope, and was sitting there like this when we found it. Hadn't been studied yet, but there's a preliminary identification. Paleoclimatology, we brought one broken stalagmite out to see how good the uranium isotopes are in Huautla caves. Turns out they're excellent. And this dated at about almost 111,000 years ago when it began growing. And we're working with Dr. Matthew Lassanet at University of Nevada at Las Vegas. He is the expert on this kind of dating in the USA. And we've got a woman, a caver from Monterrey, Mexico, Diana Guzman Barada, who is talking to him now about earning a PhD under him, with Sistema Huautla being her dissertation topic on paleoclimatology. So there is no paleoclimate data for this part of Mexico, southern Mexico, no paleoclimate data. So what this one stalagmite told Dr. Lassanet was that between 112 and 111,000 years ago, there was almost a constant monsoon. It rained the whole year. This formation began to grow, and it's never rained like that again since. So I just find that extremely interesting that you can learn things like that from speleology. Here's how it works with our expeditions. This next one will be our 7th one. So we've got a routine down. So May to July, inquiring cavers are told to send, we tell everybody the same thing, and that is send an email to me in early August. And then the latter part of August and into September, we vet the cavers that have contacted us with an interest. We find out if they really know what they're asking to get into, one of the deepest caves in the world. And then we schedule working them into the expedition. We make sure we got the chef coming and support vehicles that are going. We make our list of objectives. First money is due October 31st. That's called the gear commitment fee. And there's no refund because we're going to spend it on gear right away. Then we support through November, December, January, grant proposals and so forth, discounts on items. And then January 31st, our daily fee is due. That's $20 per day, and that's going to cover all food, rent, propane, local transport, blah, 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 all that stuff. And that's refundable until the end of February. After that, it's been spent on food and things we're going to take down there. And then you can see 4 weeks of caving in April, and then there's follow-up, because if you got sponsors, you owe them something. You owe them pictures, you owe them testimonials, you owe them something. And we write reports and articles, and then a presentation at the NSS convention every year, and then it starts over again. So we set a goal to have 10 in a row. We've done 6, so we got 4 to go. And a lot of people ask me, well, what happens after the 10? And the answer is, we'll see where we are and see if we got more cave to do or it's done. We'll see. There are sponsors and donors. Most of them gave discounts on things. You can see nice grant from Dogwood City Grotto, thinking of TAG, and we've had a couple from Swanee Mountain Grotto before. See Collin Street Bakery. Anybody that's lived in Texas knows about Collin Street Bakery. They're high-end bakeries. There's several of them scattered across the state. And I knew somebody that was their coffee buyer. So for several expeditions, my friend that is their coffee buyer got us 50 pounds of coffee donated every year. And then a couple of years ago, I said, Linda, get the coffee lined up, but then ask them if we can have 25 of their renowned fruit cakes, because they're famous for fruit cakes. And they went for it. So they gave us fruit cakes. We had no idea that that would lead to the concept of fruitcake diplomacy.
Hell yeah.
It turns out the Mazatec people really like fruitcakes. They've got a sweet tooth, and they like the cans they come in. And we've made some great friends. And we want to continue to take fruitcakes down there with us. We were invited by the local government in the government building in Huautla to put a display up, and I rode around and finally found somebody to write us a check and gave us a grant to put a National Park Service Visitor Center quality display up there with what's called a Varro book, this very robust scrapbook on a shelf. It's been there now 3 or 4 years, and it's in perfect shape, even though kids probably hang on the shelf, and it's been handled by thousands of people. It's in very good shape, very well made. Last year, we hired we commissioned this painter who's been painting murals all over Huautla to do this painting. And this is at the unveiling ceremony. This painting of a cave scene is the tag shaft in Sistema, Huautla, based on a photograph that Chris Higgins from Knoxville took. The cave system, as it is known now, plan view on the left, 55 miles of cave, which is 89 kilometers. The reason for the different colors, that's the different sections of the cave system that's been integrated through the years. And here's a profile view on the right. Now, you can see a scale here to show you how deep the system is, but I like this next scale because this is the Empire State Building on the right. The cave system from the highest point to the lowest point, which is 5,117 feet, is the same as 4 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. So if you ever go to New York City and want to walk up the stairs of the Empire State Building, think about doing that 4 times with a 30-pound pack up ropes. Of course, nobody ever really does that because you don't have the cave rigged from the lowest point to the highest point ever. We haven't yet. We do an annual brochure to use in raising support. And here's the English version. We've actually had it done in 3 languages, the English, Spanish, and Mazateco, the indigenous language of the Sierra Mazateca. And I entered this in the graphic art salon of NSS convention a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, it won Best of Show. Pesh brochure in 3 languages. Pretty cool. This guy is a school teacher up there in the mountains, and when we left in 2018, I mean, loaded in the vehicles, leaving, he walked over to the van that I was driving, and he held up a flash drive, and he said, "My life's work is on this." I said, "Yeah, okay," and it is. And he said, "It's a primer so that our students can learn the native language. It teaches them Mazateco." He said, "Can you bring 100 copies of this back next year?" And I said, "Yes." And then as we drove away, I looked around my fellow cavers and said, "How am I going to get that done? I bet every page is in color." And it was. And so we asked the Whole Earth Provision Company in Austin, Texas, who are sponsors of us, if they would come through on that project, and they did, and they printed 180 of them, which we took back down. And this is one happy camper, that teacher right there, because he asked us for 100 and we gave him 180. And now the students of the mountains are learning how to read the native language. The 3 leaders of the project are Tommy Shiflett in the blue shirt from Virginia. I'm on the right, and between us is Alma Estrada Rodriguez, who is our gal on the ground. She lives in Huautla. She teaches school, and speaks very good English, French, has lots of friends there, and is invaluable to us, to the success of our project. This is our last expedition. We take 2 group shots because we're there for a month. People that have jobs that only allow 2 weeks of vacation either come for the first 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks. So we have a big turnover weekend in the middle. And I'm retired from a career, so I am able to go all 4 weeks. So this is the first 2 weeks of the expedition in 2019. This is the last 2 weeks. This is me in the front with my daughter, Audrey, sitting next to me. Audrey's brought 2 of her children on expedition, so I've actually had grandchildren there. And Audrey started going there when she was 4 years old. Now she's a mama. And there's various tag cavers in this shot. There's Stephen Biggers. Jesse Hauser lives in Chattanooga now. Lee White, the late Lee White, right over here with his arms crossed, and so on. I had a career with the Boy Scouts of America. They hired me after 7 years of being a cave bum, from age 24 when I graduated from college to age 31 before I decided to go find a job. I'm an Eagle Scout, so they gave me a shot at it. I stuck with it for 34 years, and when I retired, I was a national level director at national headquarters, which is 5 miles from where I'm sitting right this minute. And my last project before I retired was to make this merit badge happen. You can see a caver helmet and light on the cover. Exploration merit badge can be earned through speleology or all kinds of different ways, both field exploration and laboratory exploration. And 3,000 scouts, both boys and girls, per year the last 3 years have earned this merit badge.
Very cool.
I was invited by the editor to have a page, and I think it's 30 different people have got pages: a mountaineer, a astronaut, a DNA researcher, and so forth. And this is my page on cave exploration. And the first paragraph is about Huautla. In 1980, I was co-leader of an expedition which explored the first cave outside of Europe over 1,000 meters deep. It was the 7th one in the world that deep. Today, there are over 100 caves known to be that deep. I am still co-leader of the international project exploring that cave in Mexico, the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere. Then the last paragraph there was meant to inspire youth to maybe think about caving. Caves are not all small and confining. Some are vast in length and dimensions. Some have single rooms larger than giant sports stadiums. Others have underwater passages requiring sophisticated scuba gear and cautious procedures. Some even await new technologies to be able to explore them. And I've counseled, I'm a merit badge counselor in my local council. I've counseled a couple of scouts that contacted me and wanted to do this merit badge with speleology as their realm of exploration. My retirement gig is as a public speaker about caving. You can see here that I spoke at the Vail Symposium a couple of years ago, which was really cool. It's kind of prestigious. But most of the speaking I do is on cruise ships. And since I retired 6 years ago, I've been on 17 cruises, been around the world, across the Atlantic, been from Fort Lauderdale to Santiago, Chile, through the Panama Canal. And that's on hold right now, of course, with COVID-19 pandemic. I was supposed to have one next month out of Singapore in Southeast Asia, going to Thailand and Vietnam, and I was going to stay an extra 2 weeks and hop over to Borneo and go see the Mulu caves. But that's been canceled, so I don't know if this will happen again in the near future or not. It's hard to say. Photo credits, map credits, and graphics. Really, that was that Empire State Building image was done by Aaron Addison from St. Louis. And we have a website, which I welcome you to take a look at. And if you got extra money, you can make a donation. We're a nonprofit, 501c3. And like I offered before, when I showed that image of the cover of the 3rd edition of Encyclopedia of Caves, if you look in the NSS Members Manual and get my email address and ask me for our chapter from that, I have a PDF of it and we'll be glad to send it to you. That concludes my presentation. And I'm open to questions, unless I've gone on too long.
Oh no, they like go until 9. You're good.
Okay.
Bill, can you speak to kind of like what the standards for training and skill sets are for like people who are interested in joining in future years, in terms of like vertical skill set, survey skill set, benefits for having like wildlife, first aid, etc.?
Well, we're looking for people that are well accomplished at vertical caving, that know what they're doing with rebelays and redirectionals, and
hauling big
when
ass
I'm
packs.
contacted by somebody I haven't heard of, I ask them what Huautla cavers they've been caving with, because if they've done much vertical caving, then they've probably done some caving with Huautla cavers, and then I will contact them and say, what about this person? Have you been caving with them? Do they know what they're doing? And if they've never been caving with a Huautla caver, and since we started PESH in 2014, there's been 120 different cavers. Not all of them from the United States, lots from Mexico, lots from this and that country in Europe and Australia and so forth. But I imagine 100 of them are from the United States or something like that. So they probably, if they really know what they're doing, they've probably been caving with Huautla cavers. And I've had several say, no, that guy has no clue what he's talking about. No way. Tell him he needs to get a bunch more under his belt. And I've also been known to ask people, well, what deep caves you done? Because I've been vertical caving for over 50 years and all over the United States. And there's a good chance that I've done the caves they've done. And especially in Ag or Montana or Texas or you know, what caves you done? And if they say, well, you know, I've done 150 foot pit here in southern Indiana, well, you know, start going to tag and
start bottoming Jewett 3 for fun.
Remember, it's easier to get down in a cave than it is to get out. And you don't want to go to one of these super deep caves and then realize, oh my God, you know, it's an awful long way out of here. Surveying, you know, we expect a well-rounded caver to know how to survey. Not everybody's good at sketching, keeping book, but we would expect people that are qualified enough to go caving in Huautla would know how to read instruments and how to be lead point and know that survey strings have to tie to another survey stream and aren't just left out there floating in no man's land, even though we've had some issues with that very thing the last couple of years, people not realizing it's got to connect to something. But we got a pretty good system going. And for the most part, people aren't contacting me about going on an expedition unless they know what they're doing. We award 2 awards, by the way, in Huautla. Every year. We award the Rookie of the Year, and we've actually awarded as many as 3 of those. And Rookie of the Year means, obviously with rookie, they haven't been there before. It's their first time coming. And they got nominated. Somebody or 2 or 3 people said, you know, that person is outstanding. They were tireless. They couldn't get enough of it. I think they ought to be a Rookie of the Year. Usually it's 1 person a year. Sometimes it's 2, 3. And then the other award is called the PETA. Acronym that stands for pain in the ass. And we don't have a PETA every year, and we don't publicly acknowledge who the PETA is. Everybody knows.
I think we knew for a couple years in a row. Those of us who weren't even there could have guessed.
God. Well, Lee White tried to nominate himself for the PETA. And
Are you sure he didn't invent it?
Too much. Lee White was actually a Rookie of the Year, but he, you know, Lee White, being Lee White, thought he should be the PETA because he aggravates people sometimes. But I was actually amused by him. In fact, somebody even asked me if it was possible that I was his father. And I asked, well, who's your mom?
No, we just figured that you found him there and you like smuggled him back to Dallas like sometime after 2013, because that's the only explanation for why he didn't exist in caving prior to 2013.
Maybe that should be the story. Yeah.
That's going to be the story. You found him in Huautla and you smuggled him in a giant barrel.
Another interesting thing about people inquiring, for one thing, you know, I've heard of 2 or 3 people, let's say, that are pissed off at me because they haven't been invited. Guess what? We don't invite anybody except for Vico, the chef. People have to take the initiative. People have to take the initiative and inquire. People have to want to do it, because you know what? If you sit by your phone, it may never ring. You got to send an email or make a call and show some initiative. And then there's people that do show some initiative, and I say, write me in August, and then they don't do it. Then they don't do it. And I think there's like 4 or 5 people this year that I heard from starting in maybe April up until June, July, and I said, write me in August. Earlier the better. In August. And then they didn't. And guess what? We're full for 2021. We got a wait list of a few people.
Bill, if I may say something, another aspect that is very important for a person to go, it's to be a team player.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, that'll get you the PETA.
Yeah, real quick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, team player. Oh yeah, sure, you know. And
So can you describe the teams that, you know, I mean, prior to 2021 or 2020 getting canceled, you know, we had our entire first week pre-planned out of, can you describe like what that looks like when you got 40 cavers and what you're doing with them?
yeah, we, unlike mountaineering, where, you know, you can kind of plan out a whole climb of a big mountain by day, you know, going to be here, going to be there, going to have camp 1, camp 2, camp 4, camp, you know, all that. We're shooting off into the unknown. So we started an expedition with our objectives and the teams to go on those objectives well thought out ahead of time so that we hit the ground running. We get there and people go caving the next day and they got their objectives. Then you adjust, because some things don't go, some things do go. Some things go great, and you might send 2 teams in there next week. So we go not really week by week, but it kind of ends up being like that. Like for instance, in 2019, we took a shot in the dark by renting another house and sending a team to a whole different area for 2 weeks. They might have been done in 3 days because there weren't any caves up there. Turned out there were, and they were busy the whole month. And we even put other cavers up there. So we planned on how to get things started and who's going to be doing what when we first get going, and then we adjust as the month goes by.
I do have to say
Absolutely.
that there's a lot of background work that goes in place that Bill does that he's not speaking to, but you know, he does a lot of previous work months ahead of this. And there's a lot of negotiation and things that have to be done to be able for this to happen, even to be able to gain permissions to get into the caves. So there's a lot of work that Bill does for months.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, speaking of permissions, here's a description of how different it is to cave in Huautla compared to here in the USA. In the USA, really, you only need one level of permission, and that's the owner of the cave. And that might be a government entity, or it might be the SCCI, or it might be the CRF in Mammoth. And they're dealing with the National Park Service for you in Mammoth, but really it's one level of permission. In Mexico, in Huautla, it's five levels of permission. Any one of them can be a stumbling block. What are the five? One is getting into the country. Right now, you can't. Right now, with the pandemic, you can't drive into Mexico. You can fly, but we got to haul a lot of stuff down there every year. So right now, we couldn't even go. Hopefully, it's going to be over by next April, and we can drive into Mexico. So you got to get federal permission. You got to get a visa at the border. You got to get all that stuff across the border into Mexico. And last time, we had to pay some duty on all the stuff in the vehicles, which is the first time ever. Then you got to get state permission, state of Oaxaca, and that's really from the rescue people, because if you have an incident, and you might have a rescue, even if you're prepared to pull it off yourself, they still need to know it because it's their country. So you got to get that level of permission, that's state. Then you get local municipio, which is like a county in the United States, but it's got a lot more power than counties in the USA have. That's where they got a guy with the title of presidente. So you got your municipio, then you got your agencia, which is a local, a smaller jurisdiction, and then you got your landowner. So you can have all your government permissions and you can be there, and still the landowner says, nah, I don't want you going to the cave and have you disturb those spirits, and my corn won't grow or my kids get sick. And we've actually had that said before. And next year, we're going to try to go back to a cave. It's on our list of objectives that we haven't been in 40 years because we haven't been able to get permission to go back. And it went 600 meters deep, big booming drops, 600 meters deep. And Jim Smith did a dye trace. It comes into the system 1,000 meters deep. So that means there's 400 meters of big cave missing that we haven't gotten to. We want to get to it, explore it, and it's got wind blowing through the cave, but we got to go see that owner and try a different tactic, you know. 2 fruit cakes maybe. And I was asked about medical training. You know, we asked the people coming what medical training they have. We do have a Mexican physician joining us this year for 2 weeks. I don't remember which 2 weeks it is, but he happens to be a virologist too, you know, so he's well attuned with COVID-19, and he's a deep vertical caver from Guadalajara.
Nice.
That's good. And we've got plenty of people that are EMTs
Very neat.
and you know, have taken NCRC,
Wilderness, yeah.
flat and all that. We got rope access people. And any more?
Questions. I don't know.
Guess I covered it.
You drinking any beers tonight, Bill? What you drinking tonight?
No, that's just water, but I will when this is done.
Yeah, have a Shiner for me. I haven't had a Shiner in like a year.
I do have Shiner Bock in the beer fridge. Yeah, Diana drinks.
I still have mezcal here, Bill, for waiting.